and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve today's agenda.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Next is approval of minutes of 6/9/2020 and 6/10 of 2020.
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes from June 9th, 2020 and June 10th, 2020 as presented.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is approval of claims for payment of 6/17/2020.
I'll make a motion to approve the June 17, 2020 claims for payment.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Before I get any farther, do we have everybody's phone numbers and who's out there?
Couple phone numbers. We got a 1620.
I have a 1620. I need to know who you are for the minutes.
Laura Cunningham.
Thank you. Is that all of them?
No, there was another one.
8397.
I have an 8397. I didn't catch that one.
This is Chris Burke.
Chris Burks.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Thanks.
Is that everybody?
That's everybody for now.
Okay, I might stop.
We have one more as soon as they join.
I have one more that's bouncing in.
Nine eight four five.
Phone number ending in 9845.
Hello, this is Raihan, Raihan.
Did you get that one, Angela? All right, thank you. I think that's everybody then, right? All right, from there, we've done claims, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Let's move to utility permits.
I'd make a motion to approve utility permit UT-20-029.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Secondary roads.
We've moved down to Highway S75. I put a notice up on Facebook so people understand that it's closed. Replacing some culverts. That's kind of our big news right now.
Yeah, 75 is Wind Blacktop, right?
Yes, county line with Grundy. Yep.
Okay. From there, do I have any more people called in?
That's just the Iowa Environmental Cou. Yes, there's two of them.
Okay. From there, we have 902. I will go ahead and open the public meeting on the amendment to Article 23 of Ordinance Number 29 as modified by the Board of Supervisors.
We have a comment from Jacob Olson that he recorded on YouTube, and we can pull it up if you want to.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'd ask that we start the public hearing by you allowing Angela De La Riva, Hardin County Economic Development Director, to present on some of the financial aspects of the project, to kind of give an overview of those items right out of the gate. That way we don't, my fear is that we'll have a handful of people that will speak and then leave. And so I'd rather have this information provided while we have the largest captive audience.
Okay. Angela, you want to go ahead?
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yeah, just let me know when to switch that.
So this is just a presentation on the tax revenues for the proposed wind farm. There were some assumptions that I used in creating this. So I used the information provided to us by RWE as far as what the tax rate would be and as far as what the net cost would be. And I also used our 2018 levy rate since our 2019 ones aren't ready yet. So just a little bit of timeline, so everyone's kind of on the same page with this. So the wind farm development actually began in May of 2017. RWE secured their queue position for the 200 megawatt farm in June of 2017. That just stated that they were planning on putting that energy on the grid. The first landowner payments were dispersed in November of 2017, and then since January of 2018 to December of 2019, leasing has just continued. Okay. So this is the tax revenue breakdown. So the net acquisition cost is going to be $230 million. Again, that was provided to us by RWE, and their estimated tax rate is there. So we'll go to the next slide. So this is based on Ordinance 40. So Ordinance 40 states that the first year they don't pay any taxes, and then each year it goes up by, so they pay on 5% of their net acquisition costs, and it increases up until they hit 30%. So you can see year one, they're not paying anything. Year two, their adjusted value is $11.5 million. And they'll pay just under $268,000 in taxes on that year. Mind you, they're not starting development until 2022, I believe. So the first year they would pay taxes wouldn't be until 2024. Just because obviously they wouldn't pay anything in 2023. So it'd be 2024 before we see any of this revenue. So this would actually be 2025 before we'd see this $268,000. And then so on and so forth. The max we would ever receive from them is just over $1.6 million a year once it hit that 30% of their net acquisition cost. Okay. So I also did it under our large scale incentive policy just because that is what we're going to have other projects use when they come into the county. So I thought it only fair that we put them against that as well. So their first year, so this would be 2024, they would pay on 10% of their net acquisition costs, and their total taxes they would pay to us would be $535,000, almost $536,000. And then obviously that's graduated up 10% every year till we hit year 6. They pay on 60% from year 6 to year 10. And then once they hit year 11, they're paying on 100% of their net acquisition cost. So full taxes, and that's just about $5.36 million a year, going on until they are decommissioned. So 30 years, hopefully. Okay. So I didn't go through and break down what each school district is going to get just because the tax levy rate is different for each school district. And they change from year to year, and obviously we don't have the most accurate numbers. So what I did go through, and I can show you guys if you'd like to see it later, anyone else who wants to see it. But by my figures, based on today's dollars, the school districts will get about $2,700 to maybe $3,600 in added tax revenue based on this farm, starting in 2024 under the large scale incentive policy, starting in 2025 underneath Ordinance 40. So that's where that I didn't go through and figure out which towns would be because people are more concerned on the school. The community college wouldn't see as much benefit just because their levy rate isn't as high. But yeah, development timeline, construction is assumed to begin in early 2022. RWE would need to enter into a development agreement with us sooner rather than later. Obviously, we want to make sure we have all of our ducks in a row. We want to make sure legal has plenty of time to act on it. And we want to make sure that they're understand their employment requirements. We want to make sure they understand their drainage requirements. We want to make sure that any sort of construction processes are accounted for in that development. So that way we are keeping Hardin County as safe as we can and making sure we're taking care of all the roads and whatnot. I think that's all I had on that. Is there any more slides on them? So cool. What questions can I answer?
Do you know what the sum total of tax revenue would be?
I did not add
Okay.
it up.
That's fine.
I know at one point they were saying it was going to be close to $40 million, but I don't know if that figure is accurate whatsoever. But it'll be a sizable amount of money, but it's a sizable amount of money that's coming farther down the road. I think people are anticipating it'll happen next year, but it's not going to be until 2024. It's great.
Okay. I mean, just my real quick math, based on the large scale incentive policy, that would yield probably close to $150 million for everything I've read recently. Using ordinance 40 would be closer to 42 million. So that's a significant difference in revenues to the county between the two. One other question, what have other counties that have worked with RWE used in terms of development agreements and incentives?
Yeah, so I went over to Illinois at the beginning of March and spoke with Ford County and Macon County representatives. They both have a farm from RWE. Neither of those counties provided any sort of incentive to come into their county to build. So there was no TIF given, there was no tax relief, there was no nothing of that nature. So we're farther ahead in that aspect. As far as development agreements, they just had an ordinance. They didn't have any sort of development agreements, but that makes sense because they didn't get any sort of incentives. So their ordinances were just pretty black and white.
Okay.
And they were just expected to adhere to the ordinances, otherwise they pay a fine.
Okay. So no financial incentives were given at
No financial incentives.
and there was no pushback, no, you know.
Not that I was made aware of, no.
Okay. That's all I had, Lance.
Okay,
Thank you, Angela.
thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get them on, see who's called or who's joined.
6757.
So phone number in 6757. I need you for the minutes. Can you please state your name? Are they there yet?
Oh,
And then David Frank as a second person, and then I think he wanted to say who the other person was for the minutes.
Well, yeah, let's get them on there.
okay, David, I think you're unmuted. David Frank, do you have?
Go ahead.
This is Roger Nisley and Jody Anderson from Iowa Falls.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, we never got that one number, did we?
No, they just logged off.
Oh, they logged off?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was two listed under, there's just the company name. Do we need the actual names of those people?
We probably should.
Iowa Environmental Council, is that correct? I can't read the screen
Yeah,
from here. Okay, so we need the names of those people.
You're unmuted. Our Environmental Council.
Jennifer Terry, Terry.
Thank you. Are we missing any? That's everybody? All right, public comments. let me go ahead and give everybody the capability to unmute themselves. And
I just asked to play Jacob's comment to get that out of the way.
yeah, why don't we go ahead and you had a YouTube. Let's go through that first.
Before you tee that up, just to follow up on some of the economic information that was provided, there is a third option or a third way under the Iowa Code. If Ordinance 40 was not, if a county doesn't have something like we have with Ordinance 40, and they don't have a large scale industrial incentive like we have, the Iowa Code under Chapter 441 does provide some economic incentive where a wind developer for 5 years would not pay any tax, but in year 6, they start to pay on 100% of the value. So there is a third way, but that's probably not as much incentive as what the county is offering through its economic incentive, the large scale industrial program. Just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that there was actually a third option.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Josh Odom with RWE. I just wanted to make a comment that we don't have any intent of using the county's economic development, the program that was just mentioned. We would only be using the ordinance or the section 40 of the Iowa ordinance regarding taxes. So we would not be double dipping on any kind of tax incentives.
I think our intent was to go with one or the other.
Let's go back to Jacobs. Let's start with that for the public.
Another phone number. We have another phone number.
1338. Can you please state who you are for the minutes?
Pauline Lloyd.
Thank you, Pauline. Now let's go ahead with the YouTube. Before we get this started, I'm trying to keep this minimal to public speaking, as far as keep it direct, whether you're for or against, and state your issues about it, just so we can move this along. It's slow enough the way it is, how we operate through Zoom. So if everybody could just try to keep it brief and to the point, that would be thankful.
I'm not sure how, so since we're showing a YouTube video through Zoom, I don't know how it's going to interact with everybody's Zoom call, so.
As long as everybody's muted.
The audio.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Jacob Olson here from outside of Hubbard, rural Tipton Township. Wanted to offer a few comments today about the updated zoning ordinance for commercial wind energy in Hardin County. As I think back to the last 12 months and the various events that have taken place, there's a few different buckets that come to mind for me about ways that I can kind of characterize or descriptors that I can utilize to think about what is taking place. Community, respect, integrity, influencer, and arithmetic. Let's start with community. You all as the Board of Supervisors are doing your job, and that is looking out for the citizens of rural Hardin County, looking out for the infrastructure of rural Hardin County, and I compliment you for that. You are taking lessons learned from commercial wind energy projects elsewhere in the state of Iowa and across the Midwest, and making sure that this zoning ordinance does the best job possible to protect rural Hardin County. But you're also looking at things and protecting other areas, such as the city of Radcliffe, that based upon the map of easements that I have in front of me, the people in the city of Radcliffe understand that when you factor in the existing wind farm south of town, that the city of Radcliffe is going to be surrounded nearly 360 degrees by commercial wind turbines. Do the people of Iowa Falls understand that based off the easements that have been taken out surrounding the Iowa Falls Airport, that the Iowa Falls Airport is going to be surrounded by nearly 180 degrees potentially with wind turbines, again, based upon the easements that have been taken out using the map that's in front of you. So I thank you for not only looking out for your direct constituents, but looking out for everybody that may be impacted in Hardin County. Let's talk about respect. It really disappoints me, some of the behaviors the cities of Iowa Falls and Alden have had towards this project, such as the ordinance, the resolution.
Can we skip ahead on this one?
Promoting this project. Seems that those of us.
That's personal. I don't want to.
Well, I don't know where it begins.
Yeah. Yeah, skip me ahead on that one.
About chickens within city limits, and even talked about how they did an informal survey.
Let's skip ahead on that one.
I think this is germane.
They feel that it's their job to promote commercial wind energy out here in rural Hardin County, and those of us that will be impacted by it, our opinions should not matter. Integrity and honesty. It's really been quite disappointing again to look at the number of promoters that are pushing this project in Hardin County, businesses, business leaders, that as part of their promotion for this project, they have failed to disclose the financial interest that they have to gain from this project. Where's the ethics? Where's the integrity? Where's the honesty? If you're gonna write an editorial in the Iowa Falls Times-Citizen promoting this project, the least you can do is disclose to people that you have something to gain. And I compliment you, Lance, Renee, and BJ for looking past that and realizing that sometimes there's more to the eye than just what is first visible. Let's talk about influencers real quick. I find it to be interesting, all of the lobbyists from outside of Hardin County that feel that they know more about the needs of Hardin County, and therefore they are pushing you all to make sure that this project goes forward. So I look at the list of lobbyists. We've got legal firms. We've got the Center for Rural Affairs, the Iowa Environmental Council, and the LS2 group. And the list goes on and on and on. I love public records. Glad to see all these people think they know more about rural Hardin County than those of us that live here, that work here, that are raising a family here, that own property here. And I thank you again, Lance, Renee, BJ, for setting aside the pressure that you've gotten from the lobbyists that are pushing because of their broader agenda, often their broader political agenda, and looking out for the resources and the infrastructure and the people of rural Hardin County. Finally, to close things out, a arithmetic. Since this project really came to light a year ago, there's been a lot of large financial figures that have been shared in various IFADC presentations, articles, and the Times-Citizen, big numbers. Well, what has failed to actually be delivered yet is actual broken down granular data of how this project will be projected to impact all of the different entities in Hardin County. There's been talk about it will be a financial windfall for schools. Great. I have some basic understanding of Iowa school finance, and I have yet to understand how this is going to be a financial windfall for our students, or excuse me, for our schools, because I do not see this wind farm putting more students in the chairs in the schools. And that's what we need. RWE and previously EON has had north of a year to share with us as part of the communication and community building they have promised. They've had more than a year to share with us some of the financial details, which I understand there'll be assumptions and I understand there'll be projections, but show us that 10-year financial impact year over year, how it's going to impact the city budgets, the county budgets, and the school budgets. Hasn't happened. So with that said, I'm out of time. Again, Renee, Lance, BJ, County Attorney Meyer, Ms. Sheridan, Zoning Commission, thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for exercising good government, of listening to your constituents, watching out for the infrastructure, watching out for the drainage districts, and most importantly, taking your time with everything you've done here. Enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Well, from there, why don't we check to see has anybody else called in?
Not any phone numbers.
Okay, let's go back to the public comments. Everybody's allowed to unmute themselves, correct?
Most first.
Jody, can you unmute yourself?
This is Chris Burke. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello? This is Chris
Hi.
Burke.
I have two people talking.
Did you want, I can wait, Lance, if she would like to speak.
Okay. Who's on the phone?
Chris Burke.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
I know that everybody's looking for revenue for the county, but there's, you know, the natural resources that we have in the county need to be preserved as well. And it's for future generations. And I have seen the projects going through in Story County when I worked down there, and there wasn't a lot of thought behind any of it. With working with the Conservation Service, we had a lot of problems that came in to our office when the wind generators were going in. A lot of producers came in and they had problems with tile and all kinds of things. They had in the contract they were supposed to fix them, but they had people that didn't know what they were doing. And so they came back to our office. But my concern in Hardin County is preserving what natural areas we have. And I didn't hear what the distance was from, like, creek corridors, or I know it's considered a green corridor. What was the distance that was supposed to be away from the creek corridors, like Tipton Creek and South Fork and those areas?
Go ahead, Jody. Go ahead.
Yeah. So
Hang on, Chris. She's going to answer you.
as part of the ordinance, the applicant is required to contact the Conservation Board, and it's kind of at their discretion what they want that setback to be. I know they had originally voted on a 3-mile setback from any conservation areas, but that's at their discretion as to whether they change that according to different situations or not. But as of right now in our zoning ordinance, no wind turbines are allowed in any conservation or wilderness preservation districts, but there is not a specific setback stated in the ordinance, only that method of going through the Conservation Board.
I see. So even though, you know, I don't have an area, I've got ground that goes along the creek, and we've got CRP on that ground, and we have a lot of eagles. There's just getting feedback or something. Great blue heron rookery that's not too far from the area, and watching National Geographic, they were talking about eagles, that they are injured more by wind turbines than they find most of the deaths are through those, but there are ways that they talked about things that they could use on the wind turbine that would signal it, and they could slow the speed down so that it wouldn't affect them. But my main concern is keeping our natural areas and not being encroached by the wind turbines into those areas. That's my main concern.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris.
Not in the it's not, you know, officially a designated park area, but we don't have enough natural areas left without taking care of them.
Okay. Well, I got your comments wrote down, and I will move to the next person. Thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you.
Let's go with Jody up there.
Hi, Lance, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's not as bad as feedback this time.
Okay.
So just a couple of comments. I know it's a hard decision, and I really appreciate the Board of Supervisors, letting everybody speak and looking at all the different issues. I know, as far as wildlife and things being affected by development, of course they are. But I know here in Iowa Falls, and we're fairly developed, this year alone, I've seen bald eagles, hawks. I had a baby deer in my backyard the other week when I was mowing in amongst some ornamental grasses. We have coyote, we have deer, pheasants, and those are all within the developed areas of the city. So wildlife is adaptable, and everything that man does affects wildlife, be it agriculture, industry, roads, telephone, electric power. So I'm not going to say that it would not have an effect, but I don't think it's as great of an effect, the wind turbines, as maybe is reported. The other thing I know, revenue-wise, that this would be pretty important to the county and the school districts. We as a city really don't have anything to benefit from it other than I do know when the construction goes on that usually that means an economic boom to everybody in the county. You'd have more local option sales tax, more business going on everywhere. But so just some things to think about. I know I'd already mentioned that we already have wind turbines in Hardin County. And you guys have one, there's one right there in the city of Eldora, and I really don't think there's been a whole lot of negative aspects to those. I know the school district, I think, really appreciates the income they get from it for the Eldora public schools. So I also seen, budget-wise this year, you guys, had to go into spending some reserves, and that's never pleasant to do. And we all might be doing that before this COVID thing is over, but as a source of revenue, and I understand there's drawbacks to wind, but you can't get probably a more environmentally friendly way to produce electricity than by doing it by wind. So I just really like to, support you guys. I think you guys did a great job, but I think, finding that balance between setbacks that allow the project to happen and still protect, try to protect as many areas as possible is a good path. And I think you guys really did a good job listening to everybody, stepping back, taking a look at it, and just wanted to thank you for doing that. And thank you for the opportunity to weigh in. So that's all I really have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody.
Next. Any other public comments? You're allowed to unmute yourself.
Leland Mosch would like to speak.
All right, Leland, go ahead.
I see you have reduced the setbacks from a non-participating landowner's property, and I feel any setback reduction will affect the health and safety and welfare and comfort of a non-participating landowner. I also feel that the 1.3 that you have reduced it to will violate a non-participating landowner's right to a quiet, enjoyment of his and hers land, which is considered a nuisance under Iowa law, chapter 657. I would also like to see the setback from a non-participating landowner's property to 3 times the turbine height. And then if the developer needs an additional space, I think there's an opportunity through an easement agreement to negotiate additional property for the turbine.
Okay.
I know in Wildcat Township in Indiana, Eon has built a wind farm there. They have, landowners are experiencing shadow flicker and noise at distance of 1,500 feet. They have had 3 blades break off on the 69 turbines that they have built, which was probably inadequate to protect the non-participating citizens. The blades are 124 feet long and weigh 6 tons. So I think there's a real concern on safety for the non-participating landowners. That's all I have, Lance.
All right, thank you, Leland.
Thanks, Leland.
Next.
Lance,
Yes.
this is Roger Nisley.
Yep, go ahead.
I think another issue that maybe wasn't brought up in the presentation by Angela was the local farmers and landlords that own the ground and them having a choice to develop their ground. And my understanding is that they would be paid approximately $8,000 per year per windmill. And if, you know, the present farm ends up at 80 windmills, that would be a income of $640,000. That would be income that would come into our county as well, besides the taxation money. So I think that's a substantial amount of money that would be spent here in the county. These landlords, a lot of them have signed up for these windmill easements and are hoping that they can bring this to fruition in the future. It'll be as we know, the farm economy right now is on a real tense time. The prices are down. It's looking to be a very, and I realize these payments won't come for a couple of years, but it's something that I think will help them, their farming operations, sustain themselves. We have a big windmill farm to the north of us in Franklin County. That has been a success up there. They had some problems early with drainage and different things. They've worked through all those, and those farmers have been getting the windmill payments for quite some years. And the issue about, I think in the new ordinance, there's something about a half-mile setback. I have a friend that has a windmill just north of his house. It must be a quarter mile away. He says, you shut the windows, you don't hear it. He's lived with it now for 5 or 6 years and has had no problems. So, I mean, I think, you know, those are all, some of those things can be a little bit hearsay about the effect on people. But anyway, just back to the income thing, I think that we got to think about that for our residents, farmers and landlords, the income help that it will be for our county too. That's, and over a 30-year period, that's probably another, besides Angela's amount of 42 million for the windmill taxation, that'd be another 20 million for these landlords and landowners. So that's all I had.
All right, thank you.
Lance, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So Roger, we haven't seen a contract with an exact dollar amount. We've heard hearsay anywhere from 8,000 to 15,000. And so nobody seems to want to volunteer an amount. We've had people that have signed easements come in and say they were bound. So, you know, 8,000, 15,000, I'm really not sure what the dollar amount is. And then we have a lot of absentee landowners that, you know, haven't been able to disclose much of anything either. While at some of the other hearings we've had, you know, it's been brought up that, you know, we'd be able to see what the contracts look like and stuff, and we've yet to have that provided. So I appreciate the extra income coming to the county. It's just really, what is that dollar amount? And so, and what's that dollar amount, you know, for a neighbor that's non-participating that has to deal with that as well?
I don't expect you to answer that, Roger.
Yeah. Well, and landowners all over Iowa have dealt with that, BJ. I mean,
yeah,
you know, you have the land that you know, they said your land qualifies for a windmill and the neighbor doesn't. Well, I mean, you know, sometimes it isn't fair in development how it works, and that's just the way it is. So,
yep.
And I just use 8,000. I just heard that was a minimum. I mean, you said 8 to 15.
Yeah, I've heard everything. I've heard $40,000 from some people.
Yeah,
so
no, I don't think it'd be that much. Well, maybe the RWE rep could weigh in on that, so.
Well, from there, I had somebody, David. I can't read that.
That was something different.
Okay.
Kurt had his hand raised.
Kurt, go ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, zoning regulations governing adequate setbacks are in place because it's an obligation to ensure public health and safety. Because this economic development project covers such a large geographical area within our county, it affects numerous citizens and it cannot be treated in the same way as another project that is confined to a few acres and only affects a very few people. Protection of neighboring property values and enhancing the livability of our residents are the primary objectives of the zoning ordinance. They're of paramount importance to the overall general welfare of our county. In this case, many property owners affected by the spinning behemoths and their welfare should be prioritized over the deprivation of only a few property owners' land use for their financial gain. The property values of participating landowners within even a mile of the turbines will decrease. It may not show on the assessed value of the county, but how many people are going to be interested in purchasing and living in a home close to a turbine, especially with all the information out there about the flicker and everything else happening in people's homes that are close to them. Iowa Falls recently looked into the possibility of allowing chickens within the city limits. The town was polled. Why wasn't all of Hardin County allowed to chime in? Other bigger towns allow for it. I can see roosters being banned because of the noise, but not chicken. Why doesn't the county poll these citizens that live within the shadows of these things and find out what their feelings are about living with them instead of hearing from absentee owners and those with the financial interest? These things are not environmentally friendly as everyone seems to think, and everyone should probably watch Planet of the Humans by Michael Moore. There's very few things that he puts out that I agree with, but this is pretty much spot on, the damage that these things do to build the things. You know, I could go on and on. I did some things I already touched on, is the, you know, the CRP that we've got in the area that's affected by this, the creeks that run through it, everything. I went for a drive last night. Southwest Hardin County, the windmills down there aren't affected. They don't affect creeks like they would through the center of the county, like what we're looking at. There's 3/8 of a mile up to a half mile seems to be how far all these residents down there are from these. I don't think our 3 times or our half mile setback is out of order. You know, I'm looking out for the health of and welfare of our citizens. And I guess that's about all I have. But I do want to thank you guys for your due diligence on this.
Can I just really quick ask one question? So once again, the wind turbine in Eldora, has that caused any ill effect to the school children or the neighbors around that?
I live a few blocks from it and I can hear it on windy days. Depends
hear
on the
that?
direction of the wind.
So Renee, can you also hear highway noise from some of the homes in Eldora?
From.
And what about
I only
trains?
live
I mean,
I
there's
only
all kinds of things that make noise.
Right.
In Iowa Falls, we hear trains, we hear highway noise, we hear noise from Cargill, we hear noise from Flint Hills. You know, farming itself causes noise. So, I mean, is it enough noise? Can you hear it or does it disturb your life?
It doesn't disturb my life, but living in town is a lot different than living in the country. I choose to live in town for kind of the convenience and whatever, but living in the country, I think there's a lot of people that live in the country by choice that maybe aren't farmers. And that's what they're looking for, is the peace and quiet.
So there, I mean,
From
but
the
there's
people that I've heard from that live out in the country, that have neighbors that are, it's pitting neighbor against neighbor is what it's you know, so I'm hearing from the people that don't want them, but their neighbor is putting one up right next to them.
But I mean, farming causes noise. There's roads out there. There's still noise out in the country. It is not a noise-free environment. Is that correct?
I would imagine that's correct. I mean, depends on where you live.
The trains go through in the country. I mean, we're not talking about pulling up rail. We're not talking about doing away with roads. You know, there's all kinds. We're not asking one neighbor not to use large noisy farm equipment. You know, it comes down to kind of to the rights of the landowners. And like I said, we've got them right north of Iowa Falls, and they've caused absolutely no problems. And you have the one right there in Eldora. I mean, the flicker, all the pseudoscience out there about the things that harm people's health, and yet there's one that sits right in the middle of Eldora. And I don't think it's affected the students' performance, nor have there been any health-related issues that I'm aware of. I could be wrong, unless you guys would be able to tell me what those were.
It's kind of, I think it's more down in the hill from where I live, so I don't see flicker. And like I said, it depends on the wind. I mean, because there's just enough in between me and the tower that.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask those questions.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on. Is there any other public comments out there?
Hi, this is Josh Odom with RWE. I just wanted to point out that our lease is a private agreement with private landowners. That's why it's not out in the public domain. That said, our active payments to landowners during the course of the active project, when it's operational, is a minimum of $20 million. And that's direct payments to landowners in the community. And that's on top of any other payments such as tax that would be paid out.
Thank you. Daryl, go ahead.
When we come out of the public hearing, I'm going to be recommending a couple changes to the draft that you're considering for your first consideration. So I thought I'd bring those up during the public comment part so that there may be some response to what I'm going to be asking the board to change. One is for the setback on the dwelling in the table in the proposed ordinance. Prior to the work session, the proposed setback was the greater distance of manufacturer recommendation or 3 times, and then the change was made to go to the half a mile. One recommendation I'm going to have is that we add as a third benchmark, put that 3 times back in. So the ordinance would read greater distance of the manufacturer or 3 times or half mile, so that there's 3 benchmarks rather than just the 2 in that table. And the other recommendation is going to be under section 4, subparagraph 1, subparagraph H, regarding signal interference. The proposed language states the applicant shall minimize and mitigate any interference with electromagnetic communications such as radio, telephone, or television signals caused by any WEX. And I'm going to ask that that also include GPS signals, because I understand that there's a possibility, we've understand that it does affect farming GPS signals. So I just wanted to add GPS in that list of examples in that subparagraph H.
Okay. Any other public comments?
I'll speak.
Jessica.
I've heard a lot of reasons why we shouldn't want windmills in this county, so I thought I'd offer something that would be an alternative response and being pro wind turbines. And that's simply from the perspective of tax revenues and budgeting for the county. And I'm just merely coming at this from the auditor's standpoint. When I get the valuation reports from the assessor and we're not seeing a great amount of development in our county that adds great value to tax against, in order to produce the amount of money that's keeping us going and to increase our programs and to give the proper raises and benefits and things to the employees that you continue to do without the valuation to back it up, it means it interprets to higher tax levies for the taxpayers. I live in Hardin County and I don't want to pay higher taxes, but when I'm computing what your budget asks for and applying that against the valuation report, there's nowhere to go but up in order to raise the dollars needed. And as people pointed out, I think earlier, that the budget that we passed this year showed a deficit of $2 million. There was a lot of questions asked, like, how can you do that? Well, we're okay because we're taking it out of reserves that have been carryover, but we can't sustain this long term. And from that perspective only, if you consider the 30% ordinance, or basically the ordinance 40 as is, that if a wind turbine cost $1 million or $1.5 million, you're looking at something going on the books at a maximum of $300,000. And that's just one turbine after the 7 years. And we're not going to get that type of development in Hardin County to the grand scale that the wind turbines are. I've heard all of the objections to them. I don't discount them. I think there are some valid points, but I think that you also need to look at it from the perspective of the income and the revenue that will be here, that by itself should alleviate the tax burden on the taxpayers in the long run, because we keep going up with our tax rates little by little, and at some point I think something has to give. So if we're talking 80 turbines at, let's just say $300,000 each, put on the tax valuation, or put on the valuation report, that equals a higher taxable base for me to apply the levy rates to. And that means less tax dollars to the individual taxpayers in the long run. And I just think that, there should be a consideration given to that, even though I don't necessarily think they're attractive when we drive down the road. And from a conservation standpoint, I know that there are problems considered with animals, but when I weigh the alternatives, the alternative is that we look like we are not courting economic development in our county. And this, to me, is one of the quickest and fastest ways to get money rolling in. Renee was the auditor when they did the turbines, and I don't recall being here when that project started, so I don't know if there were objections then, but we can see what they did for us. In fact, we were able to do county roads in that area and to have them resurfaced and redone to better suit the people in that area. And I'm not saying that that's what would happen with this project, but I'm just giving an example of how those turbines themselves helped us. And the turbines down there are also helping the city of Radcliffe, because they are pretty limited in their valuation base as well. And because they chose to TIF I believe 12 turbines down there in the last year possible for them to TIF, they're only tapping into a teeny tiny amount of the value they could have using TIF, and they're still able to do downtown landscaping and beautification on their main street. So I just feel obligated to speak up and say that and let you know that just from my standpoint as the auditor, I would encourage you to find a way to make this project work simply for the tax levy relief to the taxpayers all across the county. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments?
They're kind of far.
Can you hear me, Lance?
Who do I have here?
Darla Calous.
Yes, go ahead, Darla.
I just have a couple little comments. We are landowners, and I worked with a company for many years who did taxes of people who lived in the Bradford area. And I cannot tell you how many comments I heard. Boy, I'm sure glad we have those windmills. I wouldn't have made it this year if we wouldn't have had that extra payment. And I did not hear one thing the whole time I was working, and I'm retired, that it hurt their land, it hurt their neighbors. No, but I never heard one comment until I started hearing about 4, 5, or 6 people talk about this project that we're trying to do. I lived south of Alden for 45 years. We now live in Iowa Falls. We do own land. And we put up with the stink and the smell and the road you couldn't even get down. And that was fine. That was no problem, you know. Farmers have been there forever, so they can, even though the roads were built in 1862, we can put the big equipment down it, and we can put ruts in the road that are a foot deep, and nothing was ever said about that. There's nothing you can do. I had farmers come with tractors to pull my car out of the gravel road to get down it. And then I hear all these things about these windmills and the things that I went through 45 years living in the country, as opposed to the comments I'm hearing about it. It might hit an ego. You know, the sky might fall in too. But I just think the comment that was just made before about the revenue that it's going to bring to our county. We have, you know, of course, Bradford, I said, already has the windmills, and we have them down by Radcliffe. And there's going to be problems. I mean, have you ever worked on a project where you didn't have a problem? There are going to be some problems. But to make it feasible, and you keep setting it back, and a few people keep commenting, and I've listened now, I've never commented, I've just listened to the meetings, and it seems to be the same few people who are making most of the comments, which they're entitled to, they can make their comments. But I just want you to know that we're so for these windmills. It brings revenue into our county, as she just said. I mean, you know, how many big industries are going to come into Iowa Falls, and you can get this taxpayer money as these windmills are. And I thank you for your work on the project. I know it's been a headache. I feel sorry for you. I wouldn't run for Board of Supervisor if my life depended upon it. But but I just want you to know that there are a lot of silent people out there who have signed these contracts who are for this project. And I thank you for all your hard work. And I thank you very much for just listening. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darla.
Any other comments? I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak.
Hello, this is Chris Burks.
Chris?
I can appreciate everyone's comment on bringing more revenue in and everything, but this particular part of the county where we're talking about wind generators going in has some unique features to it, and I think those need to be taken into consideration. And there are a lot of other silent people out there who haven't made the same comment. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Do anybody write anything up there? I don't think so.
No, Kurt sent a link. No, not gonna pull that.
Well, we've had quite a few written comments. We go through those as we don't have time to read them all. A lot of them are in favor, a lot of them are against. We've pretty much covered everything we've talked about today. I don't think I've missed anything out of the ordinary. Have you guys?
No, I think one of the strongest things is I agree with the comment that, you know, I wish we had a means of unscientifically polling the people that live there, like the city of Iowa Falls did with their proposed ordinance to allow chickens in town. I think that doing a unscientific poll like that is a very strong way to gauge public interest or disinterest. I'm really not sure if that's a viable thing at this point, but I think allowing for some voice from those people that have to live with it and be impacted by it on a daily basis is an important part of the process. Right out of the gate, I conferred with Attorney Meyer about, you know, could this become a public referendum item? It can't. So, you know, the closest thing that could be done, something that I'm commending the city of Iowa Falls on, is, you know, getting that public input, getting, you know, that as scientific data as you can without calling it a scientific poll, because there is some margin of error and some room for some issues there. But I like the fact that there's that. But also, we've had numerous planning and zoning meetings where public comment has been allowed. We've had multiple meetings where public comment's allowed. We have a weekly meeting where public comments are allowed. And so I think we've done our best and done our due diligence to gather as much information and data on this subject area. And so I think of what we've got done today and the opinions and those things have been very critical in the process. So I appreciate everybody for participating in the process. So with that being said, I would make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. We have closed the public hearing. Now, we could do motions for changes to the amendment of Article 23, ordinance number 29. Daryl had brought a couple of them to us.
And Lance, I don't know if this is appropriate or germane at the time, but would it be appropriate that I ask to recess to confer individually with Attorney Meyer and get some, I'd like him to explain his proposed amendments, you know, to me, so I'm educated and versed on what he is requesting and which parts of the proposed ordinance.
Would it be easier for him just to do it in front of all of us?
I'm fine with you if that's, I just
And then now
make sure it's part of the process.
we all get the same.
Right.
Okay, I'm fine with that as long as you are. Okay.
So go ahead and ask and then have Daryl explain.
Well, I'll just, no. Yeah, that's fine. All right.
We have everybody muted now, right? Okay.
As I mentioned in the public comment, I'd like, or I guess I would recommend that you add 3 times as a third benchmark for the dwelling setback. So it would essentially, as it reads now, something that to the effect of the greater of the manufacturer's recommended dwelling setback distance or 3 times or half mile. So adding the 3 times the turbine height as a third benchmark.
Okay.
We can have act on those individually then.
And then the second one is under section 4, subparagraph 1, subparagraph H, regarding signal interference. Although I think it would probably be included already in the language, I just, for being clear, I'm asking that you just add GPS as an example where it would say such as radio, telephone, television, or GPS signals. So just adding GPS into
Can I have your,
H.
can I look at your copy?
Yeah.
Does that include internet? Wireless internet? Prime example, I'll use me for an example. Obviously, I'm not heard of this, but that's all I have is a power pack for wireless internet.
Right.
If all of a sudden that doesn't work and somebody else out there is doing the same thing.
I just had written down and cellular data.
Okay.
So, right. I mean, I think the spirit of what we have in our language would include that, but just so there's no misunderstanding, adding GPS and cellular communication. I don't know if satellite is actually in there, but I mean, I think our intention is that it would cover those types of communications, anything that's, communicating through the air.
I know I'm just concerned about the ability to have effective precision agricultural work go on.
Well, not only that, but if, let's say you have a farm accident and you have a cell phone,
right,
you've got to be able to reach help.
Right.
And if your signal's interfered with, so it is not only just a agricultural benefit, but it's a safety issue as well. So, I mean, I think the language we've already chosen, the spirit of it is it's going to be inclusive of all those kind of communications that are going through the air, not a landline type communication. But just to be clear, I thought we should add GPS, and it's a good idea to add the cellular digital communication to that section.
Which kind of brings up something from my 911 and emergency management meeting last night. It was discussed about the need of, in some of the towns, for updating, upgrading, or just getting sirens for like tornadoes, fires, whatever, that some of the communities are needing those updated and upgraded. They're no longer working, or you have to ride down in a golf cart to flip the thing on for a tornado warning. And there is technology out there that the sirens can be put up and actually set off by our county sheriff's department, that would set them off in each of the communities that are affected. So any of that kind of technology would have to be protected.
Yeah, I'm not after trying to get them to put up more things, but I don't want to lose what we already have.
Right.
Right. But
unless they're willing to put up more for us. But,
I don't. The table.
Yeah.
I don't have. Well, I do. Hang on. The table. Yeah. Dwelling units there.
Okay. Okay.
So let's take these one at a time. If you guys so would like to consider a motion, or the first motion to change, he brought up the setback adding 3 times. I'll be up there. I was for 3 times to start with. I know we moved it to a half mile. I still like the 3 times, but if you make a motion, I would rather make the motion. I'd rather the motion be heard as what you want it to state, not just addition of 3 times.
So in the dwelling units.
Right.
Okay. So I I would make a motion to amend table 1 under dwelling units to include the greater of manufacturer's recommended safety setback distance or 3 times total height, or greater recommended safety setback of half, okay. Safety setback of 3 times or 0.5 miles.
Or half a mile, whichever is largest.
Right, whatever is greatest.
I think it should probably read greater of manufacturer's recommended safety setback distance for 3 times total height for 0.5 miles.
Is that the motion?
Yes.
I will second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Again, I feel that the half mile is although it's respect to the people living there, I think it still struggles to work with both. So I'm fine with the motion, but you just know where I stand on it.
Yep.
Any other discussion?
Yes. So just because you have those, there are still 2 means of relief provided. There's a waiver and there's the variance board. So there are still 2 means that a landowner, developer can apply for relief. Waiver, variance board. 2 means of relief, waiver, variance board.
Yep. Glad you brought that up.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Hearing no more, roll call.
BJ.
Aye.
Renee.
Aye.
Lance.
Nay. Motion carries. Next one.
The next would be to amend section 2, paragraph 4, sub 1 H, and add global positioning satellites and cellular data to the point.
So
it will read, the applicant shall minimize and mitigate any interference with electromagnetic communications such as radio, telephone, or television signals caused by any WEX. I would also add in there global positioning satellites and cellular data.
And that is your motion.
That is my motion.
It's been moved
I'll second it.
and seconded. Any discussion? We're not missing anything?
Thank you, Joe.
Is there anything you could add to that to cover any other things that we're missing, or?
Well, I mean, trying to avoid having to just list all sorts of devices, but these, I think we're
covered.
We're covered here.
Okay. Any other discussion? There are no more. Roll call.
BJ.
Aye.
Renee.
Aye.
Lance.
Aye. Motion carries. Were there any other things you'd like to change to the ordinance?
No, nothing for me.
Or from the board?
No, thank you.
Okay, so next I have is the first consideration of the amendment to Article 23 of Ordinance Number 25 as modified for the Board of Supervisors.
I'd make a motion to approve the first consideration of amendment to Article 23 of Ordinance 29 as modified by the Board of Supervisors.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? You guys?
Nope.
I guess the discussion I have is, just so I'm clear on this, we've passed the modifications, and whether I agree or disagree doesn't matter, but I believe this is the next step, and that's moved on, so.
Correct. And again, there are means of relief. This isn't the end all be all. And our different boards and commissions are more than willing to work with landowners and developers to make things work. And I think part of that making things work with either the variance board or a waiver is to engage in respectful, effective communication.
Any other discussion?
It asks for constituents who may not want a wind turbine near them. There is a required public hearing on the application as well. So they have that opportunity to go not only to the different boards and commissions meetings, should they have one regarding the application, they also can go to the Board of Adjustment and state their case at a public hearing.
Yes. Any other discussion? Hearing no more, roll call.
BJ,
Aye.
Renee,
Aye.
Lance.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we have the option to either waive the second consideration or move forward. My personal opinion is that I would have a second consideration.
Correct. I would make a motion to set the time and date for a second consideration of amendment to Article 23 of Ordinance 29 as modified today by the Board of Supervisors for June 24th, 2019.
2020.
Or 20.
At what time?
9:01 a.m. Large conference room, Hardin County Courthouse, or via Zoom per Governor Reynolds' proclamation.
I will second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
BJ,
Aye.
Renee.
Aye.
Lance.
Aye. Motion carries next week. That skips the next one for the final consideration. That will be on next week's agenda after the second consideration. So moving on, fiscal year 2021 mental health advocate agreement with Central Iowa Community Services.
Make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2021 mental health advocate agreement with Central Iowa Community Services.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Next we have is the cost advisory service contract renewal.
I'd make a motion approving the cost advisory services contract that would be entered in with Auditor Lara.
Second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I believe I skipped over the joint public service
Yeah.
agreement
With Whitney.
with Whitten.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve the joint public service agreement, maintenance of farm to market extensions within the city's corporate limits of Whitten and Hardin County.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just that this is identical to our agreements with every other town with a population under 500.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I just want to thank Taylor for getting that expedited. So
I want to thank Aaron. Aaron got right back to me as well.
Good.
Yep. Good communication.
Yep.
Good.
So no more discussion. I will do a roll call.
BJ,
Aye.
Renee.
Aye.
Lance.
Aye. Motion carries. Let's see. Back to where I am at. Recorder's monthly report.
Make a motion to approve the recorder's monthly report for the month of May.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Next is change of status on secondary roads.
Okay, I've got 3 for secondary roads today. The first time is a position change for Travis Prohaska effective July 1st, 2020. He's going from an equipment operator to truck driver.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
The next, I have a change of status for Adam Johnson effective July 1st, 2020. He's being promoted to motor grader operator.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
The last one I have change of status for the secondary roads department is Lucas Burton. He is being promoted to heavy equipment operator effective July 1st, 2020.
And I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I believe that's all we had for secondary roads.
Yep.
Now I have this change of status in the treasurer's office.
Here.
Okay, I've got 3 change of status in the treasurer's office. The first is Jessica Ann Wright, effective July 1st. She will be having a pay increase to $45,540, and that is per discussion at Treasurer Eichmeyer's budgeting meeting with our board to move Jessica to 70% of the treasurer's wages.
I will second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
The second I had is a pay increase for Deanna Vo, effective July 1st, 2020, to a salary of $52,696. And again, this was per Treasurer Eichmeyer's budget discussion with the Board of Supervisors to move her to 81%.
Second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
The final change of status item in the treasurer's office is for Sherry Lee Simons. She's the driver's license deputy. The salary would be $45,540.00. And this is another item that Treasurer Eichmeyer discussed at our budget meeting that will move Sherry to 70%.
And I will second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Now we go to salaries.
I would go ahead and make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2021 Hardin County salaries as presented.
And I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I appreciate the hard work that the department heads put into this and the, kind of back and forth that it took to get it done. I also appreciate Becca Junker's patience and
persistence in
getting it done. She goes above and beyond, and I appreciate that every day. So I appreciate her.
I did talk to some of the department heads. They are available to answer any questions if you guys had them.
Nope.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing no more, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Next is change regular meeting date of 7/1/2020. It falls on Wednesday. If we move that ahead to the June 30th, or we could just have another special meeting on June 30th for claims to finish out the year.
Sure.
I'm okay with having two meetings.
Okay.
I see no reason to have two meetings 2 days in a row. So I would just make a motion to change the regular meeting date for that week to Tuesday, June 30th at 9 a.m.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
And we'll just make sure that Denise knows to contact Lee, and we get all our ducks in a row for drainage, so we maintain that continuity for the day.
Yep. And the biggest reason for this is to finish the fiscal year out.
Right.
Get bills paid.
Get bills paid
Timely without
in this year.
supplanting into next year.
Yep.
I'd say ask Mindy if she needs the information sooner than she needs to change her deadline.
I bet she will send that out there.
Yeah.
Yep.
She was waiting for us to take some action.
Yep.
Perfect.
So any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. That is regular 9 o'clock, right?
Yep.
Yep.
It will be available via Zoom still.
Okay. Next I have is COVID-19 update.
Good morning.
Good morning, Thomas.
So we continue to have increases. I think yesterday and today are the only 2 days we haven't seen at least one additional case. So maybe we're on that leveling out and dropping down. Continue to work with the nursing homes. They are currently working on their first phase of being able to reopen nursing homes to visitors. So it'll be a little while before that happens. And then we've been working on the plan of the stock of how we're going to maintain a stock of PPE for both them and the county responders so that we can look at what's coming in the fall. And then last night, the commission approved looking at the supplemental grant from Homeland Security in some extra COVID funding that came from federal government through the state. And so we're going to be working on that in how we store and process PPE through the office. Otherwise, everything's going as well as can be expected at this point. A lot of the places have increased their PPE usage again, especially on the hospital clinic side, as they had several people come in that they didn't know were COVID positive, and so they had some employees that got exposed. So they're back to a full PPE usage, and so I'm working with Homeland Security on that issue. Homeland Security was hoping to be able to stop through the state. They were hoping to stop PPE distribution by the end of the month. I don't think that's going to be a realistic picture, but we're still working on that at the state level.
Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas.
Are there any other updates? Let's go ahead and move to public comments. Give everybody the capability of unmuting themselves. Are there any public comments? Hearing no public comments, any other business? From there, I could ask for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We're adjourned.